Dr. Bob's books are available downstairs, or at least a friend of his who wrote them by the name of Rondell, which we're going to keep in secret. But all his books are available downstairs, or most of them, and they're available for your purchase, as well as we have a bookstore also down there with other types of books. I have no other announcements with the exception of let you know that you're really in for a treat. I'd heard Dr. Bob's tape, and it intrigued me to come listen to him in person. And I walked away, I guess, from the last one still wondering whether I was a traveler or a tripper, and I'm real not sure. I've traveled from Dallas to here, and I've tripped a few times, too, on the way. But I am tickled to be here. He probably has one of the most simplest approaches to living, I guess, that I've ever heard, And so if y'all will tune into that, I think all it do is make your life a lot simpler. Dr. Bob.
Well, after all that build-up, I feel like getting on a plane and going back to California, but I guess we'll stick around here as long as we got here. Since I was here last, we no longer have chalk. I wore clothes that wouldn't matter today instead of my dark ones, and we have gook here today. Now, I was requested by Marcy and by a few other people to talk on life's word. Now, that's a little book that we put on. I have it printed. It has no author's name on it except life. And I have always resisted talking on the book because I thought everybody could just go ahead and read it. But inasmuch as it was requested, and it makes it very easy for me, and I'm lazy, I will talk on life's word today. And if you can stand it tonight, we'll continue on it tomorrow. Is that all right? And if you don't like it, well, say so, and we'll quit. Now, the only way I know to talk about it is somewhat read it and point out some of the things as I understand it, what it refers to. Read it with simple, everyday, modern, pseudo-English. It's written in very high-sounding these and thous and thys and all that stuff, and I can't hack that. So I will just stick to you and me and etc. I'm going to draw a little picture here, which you have seen somewhere along if you've been here before. That here is a physical body, which seems to be a very essential thing for people to get along with. And in here is an awareness. Some people call that mind. I do not. And something here that we will call life, and we will refer to it with the letter X. When I went to school a long time ago, they told me that in algebra that if you knew something existed and didn't know what it was yet, you put an X there. So I know that something exists, but I don't know what it is, so we'll put an X. And there's always some function of a human being is always making some function. So we're going to talk about this, and I may point to it every now and then from out of life's word. Now, if you don't like the way we do this by reading about it and comments on it, which is the only way I know to do what Miss Marcy requested, and you know what Marcy requests, Marcy gets. Doesn't she, Bob? Did he leave already? So at any rate, we will proceed with it on that basis. So I had one in my pocket, and so this one here can still be sold. I happened to find one in my pocket. Incidentally, we have a new edition of it that we had printed in Canada, and it's in beautiful blue and white print, and it's in color and a slick finish. Do you have any of those down there, Marcy? Well, I'll order them, Donna, and it costs more, but they're worth more because they're pretty. They have the same words in them, understand, but it's been newly typeset and published in a very deluxe edition, to which everybody could have one, and I think the price went up less than the inflation rate, okay? I told Donna when she called me to see if I'd come here that I couldn't come for what she used to charge, because inflation's gone up. The airplane tickets have gone up, and every other thing has gone up. Parking gone up. Gasoline to get down to the airport went up. So we finally negotiated, and I let her talk me out of most of it, but not quite all. And from now on, we're really going to hang it on, you know. It's really going to get with it the next time. So you got the bargain this time. So we'll start with last word. It starts off and says, I am life. So the writer of this little book claims to be life. Who are we to find fault with it? I live in all bodies, inspiring them always to do my will. Now, frequently I have people that said, if I only knew the Lord's will, I'd do it. If He just let me in on it. And seems that He said, well, I've already got you doing it, so you don't have to worry about that one anymore. This book eliminates all worry and concern if you take it a little seriously. It really gets all these things that we fret and worry about and make so important, our evolvement and our enlightenment and our getting with it and all this stuff. It gets rid of it. I inspire this message, which is for those only who can receive it. Now, of course, that's all of us. Now, we may receive it slightly different, but we'll hear something somewhere through the thing. I'll guarantee you'll hear something, and that something is plenty. You don't have to get every word. In fact, if you only got one of them, do quite fine. It says, I know all mysteries. That which I send has a hidden or inward meaning for you. If your inward heart does not see the wondrous truth, be sure the brain mistaketh the meaning. Now, the word thy is used all along through this little book, and thy has been understood by many people to refer to as a pronoun, but it is the word thee, T-H-E. I believe it's pronounced these days as the. Is that correct? I never have been able to get it that way. I have a hard enough time with thee. So, be sure the brain mistaketh the meaning, and it does that by interpreting according to its preconceived opinions or frame of reference. Think not that last word is of no interest. If the body thrills when touched by earthly joys, how much more will it thrill to the touch of that which is heavenly? If the blood flows quicker and the tears spring forth when earthly emotions quicken you, how deep and strong shall be the current when I put mine own hand on the heart. Now, life deals with awareness. Now, this thing we put as awareness is in this little book called heart. It doesn't refer to that little pumping piece of meat in our chest. It refers to what one does is being aware is called the heart. And the heart is what determines what will be done. If you say, I'm going to stand up, well, the heart has determined that, and you stand up. Now, you don't know how to stand up, I don't think. I've noticed that most people think they push up from their feet, but I've observed that you're pulled up by your head just far enough to reach the ground. I think that's the way it works. Try it and see if you can get up without tightening up your neck. Anybody want to try that? You want to try that, Mac? See if you can get up with your neck relaxed. So do you see your head pulls that long carcass up till it's straight up and down above the ground. And you don't know how to do it, you only determine what. Now the heart says what. X takes care of the how. Now don't jump that in that you decided what you wanted was a new Rolls Royce and you figure that X will buy it for you. Notice it is really not interested whether you have a Rolls or not. Fear not, last word. Now, I have a lot of people that says that thing just scares me to death. I say, well, don't read it. You know, why bother with it? Nobody told you had to read it. I just make it available. If it frightens you, lay it down. Fear not, last word. It will strip you bare of the complacency. It will destroy the self-righteousness. It will show you that you have always condemned me unknowingly, that's life, and it will humiliate you to the dust. Yet fear it not, for you are mine. Unto myself I have taken you, through you do not know it, though you do not know it. So we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be doing anything unless life had decided it. Now, we think, well, I decided to go out to Lake Whitney for the weekend, but, you know, there's a lot of things you decided to do didn't happen very well. So life says, well, you can profit from this, so you will get involved in it in some way or other, so you got here. Fear is a lack of trust, a trust in life. You know, that's what everybody fears, that his life don't know what to do. Is that right, Mary? You know, you figure little old Mary's got to figure it all out. But really, you know, you don't have to know what to eat. Life will tell you you're hungry for peanut butter, and you get peanut butter, and after a while it tells you you're hungry for biscuit and sausage, and you get that, and after a while it says a little shot of grits would be pretty good, and so on. So it tells you don't have to figure all that stuff out. Fear is a lack of trust. If you do not trust me, life, whom will you trust? Used car dealers, I heard. Will you put the trust in father or mother or brother or sister? You know, we sometimes think maybe the relatives will take care of us, but I'm getting along all right without relatives. I had some once, but they didn't help much, so I departed, you know. I don't think I have any anymore. These two do my will, however selfishly they seem to act toward you. Have you found that they betray the confidence that you put in them, that they expect of you that which you cannot give? You know, there's a lot of folks expected an awful lot of it. You didn't seem to deliver, and they got very upset, and so you felt, I just can't please people. They're very difficult to please, or some folks even go so far as to feel guilty because they can't please everybody. Of course, none of us, I'm sure, ever did that, did you? You wouldn't do that, would you, Beth? You feel guilty because you didn't please everybody? Not me. Huh? You lie well, too, don't you, Beth? I noticed that. Blame them not. They are my ministers to bring you unto myself in perfect surrender. Now, surrender doesn't mean to become an abject nothing. Surrender means that I have ceased to know what ought to be. Now, that's a pretty hard thing to give up, you know, because we are experts in knowing what ought to be. I know how you ought to behave and how you ought to behave and how you should do everything and whatever. But, you know, if that could be given up, it's called surrender, which means possibly the things that we feel we're most rich with is, I know what ought to be. I know how you ought to behave. I know what you ought to do. You know, I really don't, but I don't even know what I ought to do. But let's say that we could give up thinking we know what ought to be, and we could live quite contentedly with what is. It's been pretty nice so far, hasn't it, Mac? Huh? Well, it's when you wasn't comparing it to what you knew ought to be. Now, if I compare what ought to be with what is, it comes out in a mess right now, doesn't it? Right now, it should be cooler. The air conditioner should be more cool in here. People ought to be leaving $1,000 apiece to come here tonight. Marcy would help pay the bills, wouldn't it? And, you know, that's what are some of the things that ought to be. But that's not what is. Now, when I compare what is with what I think it ought to be, what is comes out looking pretty shoddy. Is that right? And if I don't compare it to anything, I'm simply enjoying it. Isn't it utterly amazing? I work with a guy who says, it's amazioni, that's what it is. So it's really amazing that we can walk and see and hear and touch and speak to each other and be aware of what's going on around us and just simply being alive. That is very amazing. But if I know what ought to be, I'm in a pitiful shape, aren't I? Real bad. I can feel so sorry for myself. And very justifiably, too. So we'll leave that one. That's surrender. You need not worship me. Period. In the heart there is that which is one with me. In other words, there's a little bit of I in here which is one with X. It is that which says what without making a judgment about it or anything. I draw a line under that there. And then there's another kind of I we put out here with little quotation marks around it, which is false one. You need not worship me. In the heart there is that which is one with me. Now, you certainly don't have to worship something that's one with you. You don't have to worship a toe or a foot. Now, I'm very thankful that thing's down there, but don't worship it. But if you do sincerely worship any god or any godlike man or anything of heaven, earth, or hell, then you do unknowingly worship me. So if you worship anything, even money, says you are worshiping me because, you know, the whole thing's made. There isn't anything else anyway. Have you an ideal? I am that. Have you a love? I am that. That's really what you care about. You need not believe life's word. You don't have to believe a thing in this book. You shall feel in the heart that I am there, but I have given you also a brain to question and to analyze and deny. Fear not to use it. In other words, challenge everything. There's nothing more unspiritual than to be gullible. That is sometimes called faith. You just believe something because some joker stood up and talked loud and clear and said it, or you found it written in a book. And after all, everything in the book has to be true. You know that, don't you? So there's nothing more holy than to question and challenge, because that's the only way you're really going to ever find out anything. Period. Not by being gullible. If you just believe something because somebody you choose to look at as an authority said it, or some book you was told was an authoritative book, you're just being gullible, not spiritual. And let's don't call that faith. Let's just call that what it is, being gullible. Most of us have a large supply of it. That makes us pretty sitting ducks for about everything that comes along. You need not believe life's word. You shall feel in the heart that I am there, but I have given you also a brain to question and to analyze and deny. Please use it. Fear not to use it, for I have sanctioned its power both to question and to analyze and also even to deny. Sometimes you can't ever figure out anything till you deny to start over a little bit. You will be told that I'm all-powerful and always cause my will to be done. Whether the thought comes to you to penetrate into the holy mysteries of my revelation, or that other impulse comes to you to refuse or neglect my message, know that both of these are from me, and are sent unto you in order that you may be called by that one which appeals to you the strongest. So something in here will, through the next day while we work on this, will appeal to you very strongly. Now, I hope not all of it does, because that would look a little bit gullible, but there will be some phrase, one of the mysteries in here, that will appeal to you. I have been through this a number of times, and there's one that appeals to me, and it's the only one that really appeals to me, but it takes care of everything else. I don't need to bother with the rest of it. It takes all of it straight and nice and free. So one of them's going to be strong, so if you listen along here and there, it will hit you in the head, and then we can all go home as soon as the last one got hit. We can all take off then, so we won't have to go fiddling along. Let me know when the last one gets done. If the thought comes into you that this message is not inspired of me, maybe some joker just wrote it some night or whatever, then be sure that it is not for you as being a message of authority. And I hope it's not a message of authority to anyone. Because if it's accepted as an authority, you would either have to make me an authority or the printed page. And I'll guarantee you neither one are. So let's leave all the authority bit off and just Does what it said back here. Deny it, challenge it, question, analyze it, do anything you want to, but don't just take it on. But it is for you just as you see it. If you are filled with wrath, that my authority be claimed for all that is done, know that such wrath also is divine, and that I inspire it in the heart and make it serve my will. Nothing wrong in being wrathful every once in a while. You say, well, that is the most damnable mess of stuff I ever heard. It's against every religious principle I ever heard. It's against every spiritual teaching. Hang in there. Hang on. That's the way we want you. My authority is a claim for all that is done. Know that such wrath also is divine, then that I inspire it in the heart and make it serve my will. So just let it sit there. I do all things well, and it shall be well for you if you can take this message as being of no authority. It may throw an idea out, but don't take it as an authority and say, man, I got to believe that. So it's terrible. Except as my voice in your own heart speaks. So if you hear something that hits you, it's all right. In all writings, all speech, and all language, there is no voice but mine. Do you suppose that if there wasn't life in one of these bodies here tonight, any one of them could say one word? You ever see a corpse start talking? If you do, I'll run. Did you? So life is the only thing that can talk. So remember, life is doing the talking, not a person or a personality or anything. So in all writings and all speech and all language, there is no voice but mine, says life. That which calls you not is no voice at all, but that which calls you, whether it be bold or to surrender, is my voice alone. So it sometimes tell you to fight, and sometimes it may say surrender, but if it does, that's why. I live and love in the body. Now, the body would not be alive if X, spirit, whatever we choose to call it, is not there. We then have a relic left on our hands, a dead body. Huh? So if it's there, well, that's what's running the thing. I live and love in the body. When you say I am or I love, then that is me speaking. When you say I have or I want or I believe, then that is the self-consciousness speaking for itself. Now, we've talked about not I's, as lack of a better word to refer to, that this one here says the whole purpose of living is to be non-disturbed. I'm not going through those. And this one says complain, this one stick up for rights, and this one blame, this one says please everybody, this one says quote the proper authority, and this one says you got to improve yourself. Now that is called the personality or the self-consciousness speaking for itself. It is not I, it is not life at all. And so most bodies are operated by personality, not by life. However, life does kind of balance things up and keeps things going in spite of all this stuff. And behold, the self-consciousness shall die with its possessions and desires and beliefs. But I am undying forever, says life. Now it says that these things here will die. And the personality made up out of complaining, sticking up for rights, blaming, pleasing people, trying to quote proper authorities, improving self, and knowing that the four dual basic urges are the whole purpose of living. The four dual basic urges are the desire to have total comfort, physical, mental, emotional, and psychically and otherwise, and to escape the other one. So it is trying to gain physical comfort, attention, approval, and a sense of being important. And it wants to escape physical pain and the pain of being ignored or rejected or disapproved of. Now, if anybody wants to check out what personality is doing, it's not very difficult to see if the greatest amount of time and effort isn't spent on that little chore. Would that be about right, Miss Mary? Trying to gain physical comfort, to get attention, approval. You know, I have people call me up and say, I only slept an hour last night. Oh, it was so horrible, and I tried all night to get to sleep. Well, does anybody here know how to get to sleep? If you do, you've got something to sell. You know how to get to sleep, or do you just drop off to sleep and after a while you wake up? You know, when you're trying to go to sleep, you can't. When you're trying to digest your food, you don't do very well at it. When you're trying to keep your heart running regularly, it jumps all over the place. And if you're trying to be very comfortable, you'll find a jillion little itches, a little tension here, a little pull there. You better turn this way, and you better turn that way. Heavy, you know, it's just heavy. So I tell a lot of folks that come in to visit me that no self-respecting body will work well while being spied on. And I'd like for you to kind of put that down in your little notebook somewhere, that no self-respecting body will work well while being spied on. Now, we'll even further extend that no self-respecting awareness will work well while being spied on. And Spirit says, you spy on me, I'm long gone. So you can't very well spy on things. And if you also notice someday when you have nothing else to do, that all your sensory organs are directed to the outside. You hear sound waves from outside. Thank goodness you don't hear what's rattling in your head unless you become psychotic. You don't smell your breath and everything. You smell other things from the outside. You don't hear things rattling. You don't see inside. You see things on the outside. So if you notice all the sensory organs, touch, taste, smell, hearing, etc., all turned outward. When you turn them around and try to feel of what's going on inside, you become in a very anxious state. Very anxious. So I would like to suggest, if anybody wants to check this out, that tonight when you go to bed, you try to get to sleep in 1 minute. Don't fiddle around there, just let it fall in and happen after a while. You really get with it and force yourself to sleep with willpower and strength and knowledge. Will you please? And you'll all go to sleep about 9:30 in the morning. We don't have to work tomorrow. Well, you sleep all day. You have a body, but you are not the body. You're not the body. You have a consciousness of self-existence, but you are not the consciousness. What then are you? Body you are not. Consciousness you are not. You cannot tell what you are. Now, isn't that just about right? You know, I have people come in and they say, my body hurts me, my mind's driving me crazy, and I have to save my soul. And I have to watch everything I do. Now, what is there left over? You know, what's saying I there? There isn't anything left. You know, what would you think it might be after all that you claim you own? You've heard those phrases, haven't you? My mind, my body, my soul, my spirit, my past, my future, and all these things. Now, you own all that stuff. My symptoms, don't forget those. All my symptoms. Organ recitals people give. Go through organ after organ. This, the liver don't work well, the heart's not good, my diaphragm sucks, stomach's low, my knee is not working well, my skin breaks out. You know, it's one organ after another you hear about. So, when you go through all this, what's left over to do the claiming? So really what most people conceive of themselves is a verbal device to avoid responsibility. You see, if my body hurts me, I'm not responsible. My mind's driving me nuts, I'm not responsible for that. The mind's doing it. My body hurts me. My thoughts kept me awake all night last night. See, I'm just not responsible at all, am I? There's anything there to be responsible. Nothing there to take charge. Nothing of anything. So, unless we can conceive that I means whatever life is, we get the sense of awareness situated in X, not in one of these things or this out here, I'm a cowboy, that's my function, I don't mean things. So when I can see that I am an expression of life, and I am responsible for choosing what I will do. About right, isn't it? You couldn't say, well, my hand is hauled off and bopped her, could you? I've heard people say it did. It's like when we drop a cup, we say the cup slipped out of my hand. The damn cup did it. Anybody can see that. I didn't have nothing to do with it. And cars do a lot of things, They go out of control. Did you ever hear about that? You ever see a car just get out of control? Does your 280ZX, you ever wander off and get out of control? It's liable to some of these days, isn't it? And isn't it wonderful to hear about my emotions? Got all out of control last night. Who do they belong to? Perhaps you don't own any emotions. They're just things you do. It happens when you're not in charge. Is that right? But you can blame those emotions for doing things to you, can't you? Do you ever say, my temper just run away with me? Do you ever do that, Beth? My temper is just uncontrollable. It ordinarily has a little chain on it, or a leash, or a collar. I guess it's like Becky's dog. It's got a rhinestone collar, but every once in a while you drop the chain or the collar breaks, and then it takes off. Isn't that marvelous? Man. You are I myself. It says in big, bold, capital letters here. You are I myself. That's what's really doing the talking. X is the only thing that can talk. The rest of it is just rattling around there. You are one with me. Now, that is something that maybe we could conceive of as a vague principle, but we haven't experienced it. So don't try to experience something just or go around mouthing it off because you've seen the fundamental principle of it. It's laid out here. You are I myself, says life. You are one with me. Yes, you are that. Our God of gods, creator of worlds, the beginning and the endings, the all-power, the triune glory of life, truth, and love. Boy, what pretty words. Which you have been designed to make the body its habitation. The body is my temple wherein I dwell and through which I express my will. Now, isn't life dwell within the body? And we've all seen bodies without life in them, and we get very pious and say, here lies the remains. We're very holy about it. We don't think much of life, but what's left over we get very touchy about. We get very sentimental over carcasses and dead bodies, but we don't seem to really realize that, look, I'm talking to life there. I'm looking at life here. I'm speaking to life. I love life. I appreciate it and everything. We don't see that, but boy, we really get very pious and drop everything and go see a dead body, don't we? That's funny. Have you ever done that? Just dropped your business and household things and everything and took off some part because there was a dead body over there somewhere? Mama used to drag me to those things, but I haven't been to one of my own willpower except once, and they asked me to say a word over him. So I went and said, well, old Harry left us a little chore. Get rid of the remains. Let's get it done and go home. And the undertaker got very upset because he was all set for tears and all this stuff. He kept trying to get in. I said, look, man, we're paying you. Let's get this job done that Harry left us to do. So he grabbed up a rose and went and put it on Harry's wife, who hadn't spoke to him in 5 years without screeching at him. And he tried to get her all wound up, and I went and took the rose and said, let's get it over with. And he finally understood me. We had hired him. And let's get old Harry's remains in the ground. That's what he left us to do. So that was the shortest funeral presentation in all history. Let's get it over with. Harry said, get rid of this, and that's what he left us to do, and that's what he couldn't do for himself. In the season that shall feel the ever-present I am and I love in the heart, then you will know that you are mine, that the mouth speaks my voice, that the heart beats with divine impulse, and that I live in you. Now, a great teacher many years ago that we've all read about said, the Father and I are one. Well, they got a little commotion started. They nailed him to a tree for making a foolish statement like that because nobody could understand it. And, of course, I wouldn't suggest you go out and say it today. They won't nail you to a tree, but they have places where they lock you up or give you some very powerful drugs so you forget foolishness like that real quick. But don't mind to be aware of it if it should ever be aware to you. But you don't have to run around and tell everybody. It's dangerous. So in the season that you feel the ever-present I am and I love in the heart, then you shall know that you are mine, that the mouth speaks my voice, that the heart beats with divine impulse, and that I live in you, this body. And that is one of the greatest things, I think, that one can come up and realize. And as far as I'm concerned, it eliminates all troubles in the world. Now, I didn't say challenges, because life is full of challenges. If you go out and look in the desert, you'll see a tree growing up against rocks. You see it growing in sand piles. You see it growing through brambles. You see things that really looks like they have no chance of being there. But life has all these challenges. But you know, I've never seen one of those little cactuses or those little desert trees complaining about how hard it is to get along. And we've only had 3 inches of rain this year. Did you ever hear one of those little plants purring and moaning and feeling sorry for itself and trying to sell you on how unfortunate it was? Have you ever had that, Mary? Huh? Did you ever see a little dandelion moaning because the wind was going to blow its beautiful hair away? Or that somebody was going to run over it with a lawnmower? You know if you do. You ever run over a lawnmower with a dandelion with a lawnmower? They beat you back up poor morning. Your back pressure is going on. You ever cut crabgrass? Oh, man. So life will have its challenges, but once you see what you really are, then you will not have troubles. Now, most people here have troubles. Is that right, Beth? You've had your lots of trouble. I talked to an old man one time many years ago, and I was rattling off some of this stuff I talk about. And he said, say, Bob, what you're really saying is that what I finally caught on to the other day, I'm a very old man. And I've lived a very long time, and I've had an awful lot of trouble, damn little of which ever happened. Now, has most of the trouble you've ever had ever happened? Or did you just worry that it was going to? Did you ever starve, Mary? Did you ever worry that you would be totally without funds, have no way to eat and sleep, thrown out on the street cold and hungry like this poor little match girl of Baghdad? No friends, no cares, nobody to care for you, huh? We've all had those kind of troubles, haven't we? More or less. There's Miss Monroe back here. She don't have that. I think she did once, but she forgot about it. You had that once when you was a kid, didn't you? Perhaps you think, now that you are a separate soul. But hereafter you shall see the heavens opened into the heart, and then you shall see that I and I alone exist. Now, if there wasn't any life, there wouldn't be anything existing. There may be a bunch of mud balls floating around, but there wouldn't be anything to be aware of it, would it? So life is the only thing that can be aware of anything, so it's the only thing that really can say, I exist, is life. The rocks and all that don't do that. And that there is no other soul or spirit but me. Life is what we're all talking about. Now, you may use all kinds of other words, but even the scripture that some of us read once in a while says God is life. And so we take that kind of lightly. We forget all about it. But nevertheless, as we look around, we'll see that that is what is going on. And talk about miraculous things it does. Just study it. They're writing a little book called the Magic Book. And the Magic Book takes on some of the things that life does. Now, would you think it was a magical stunt if I could take a ham sandwich and a glass of milk and hit it with my little magic wand and make a human finger out of it? You'd think that's a pretty good stunt, wouldn't you? Does it every day. And we take it for granted. Totally unconcerned with it. We yak it up and it makes human flesh and blood in a matter of hours. No labs or anything else can do that. Even the people with genetic tinkering can't do it. So there is only one thing that really exists that matters, and that is life. Do you say, is there none but God? That's the question. Then who am I? Then you say it no more, for this mystery shall be revealed unto you. That is called the first mystery. The mystery will be, you're not going to force it, you're not going to make it happen. You are not going to do anything to fudge it over anything. It is simply going to be one day you're aware that life is what is. And that life is a mystery beyond all comprehension, but that you can be aware that you are life. And I still say from there on you have no problems. I did not say you wouldn't have challenges. I didn't say the wind wouldn't blow cold on you someday and that you'd be uncomfortable. I didn't say you wouldn't stump your toe in a rock and hurt your toenail. I didn't say you wouldn't get sunburned or anything, but you would be quite content for that to be, because life goes on and takes care of all those things very, very nicely. It's only when the person is operated by this non-I that says the whole purpose of living is to be totally non-disturbed at every minute, then we are not content to have any disturbance. But, you know, that's not so necessary, because nothing thrives well unless it has a bit of resistance. We say there's 4 different forces going around. They all work together as one. There is initiative, resistance, form, and result, and they all go to make up any completed phenomenon. Without any resistance, you don't get much. If you planted a bean seed in top of the porch and kept it just damp and everything, it'll grow a sprout, but you'll never get a bean plant because it has no resistance. You'll just get a bean sprout. And it'll fizzle out for very long. It don't grow to the way it dies because there's no resistance. If there's no resistance to anything, it comes to a screaming halt before very long. Okay? Is that right, Miss Stone? So can we be simply that life is, and that I'm quite content with it like it is? I'm not griping and so forth. I use a word called gritching, not Gibson saying all the rest of it. Because everything isn't just like I wanted, or am I quite capable of seeing that life makes everything whirl along? It's been running this situation called planet Earth with life on it for innumerable number of years that we don't know anything about, and who are you and I to come up and say we can straighten it all out like it ought to be right quick? I've noticed that all the people who try to straighten it out sure make messes. It takes even life a long time to get them straightened out after that. Okay, we've been talking for about an hour. Marcy, do we go one more tonight, or is one enough tonight and start from there? Donna? Well, I'm always feel that I talk all night, but I'm not going to. But what is your usual arrangement? 9:30. Want another session? Take a 5-minute break and start over again. Okay, we'll have a 5-minute break and we will continue in a minute. So we will start. You got the button pushed, Donna? Okay. Again, life is doing the talking, not some person. I have developed the body by devious means that it might be a habitation for me. In other words, not everybody seems to be a habitation which life can express itself clearly through. Generations after generations of bodies have gone before yours. Each generation added strength to the constitution and eliminating some weakness. And now, if you can receive it, the body is ready for the consciousness of my presence. Possibly it took millions of years or thousands of years, or if you have some other idea, maybe it only took 6,000 years. But whatever it is that life is saying somewhere along here, that bodies at one time, or a given set of bodies, very few were capable of having the strength and the necessity of saying that life is present here, or that spirit is present here. And it took a long time, and so there's been lots of turmoil in the time. Through devious, I've had a lot of people object to this word devious. But devious doesn't mean unholy or anything. It means by using any and all methods that command to do something. So devious has been twisted around, I think, in the English language to basically mean that somewhat dishonest or attempting to deceive or something. But devious means, as it's used here, to use any and all methods to construct a human body that could be ready for the consciousness of my presence. Through devious means have I brought you, providing ever influence that could appeal to you, in order that bodies shall be developed to whom nothing can appeal but my will. Now, we all know that bodies can be appealed to by many things through personality that can appeal to many things that are destructive to it. And says if you get the body so well developed that nothing of these destructive things seems to appeal to it. And I'm sure a lot of people here understand what that means. Have I not hardened the heart to the cry of the oppressed, and suffered you to be tempted to sin, whatever that may mean? That means to miss the mark, incidentally, not done something that somebody told you not to do. And have I not fed you on the poisoned fruit of the forbidden tree of the so-called knowledge of good and evil? The picture we had a while ago, each of those things on there knows what's good and what's evil. I don't know what's good and what's evil because I don't know what's going to be the outcome of it 2 weeks from now, 2 years from now, or 20 years from now, and I don't believe that anybody else here does. Do you, Bobby? So how would I know it was going to be evil? You know, suppose we had a flood and it washed something out, washed somebody's house off tonight. We don't know what would have happened had the house stood for another 2 weeks. We don't know that. So we don't know what's good and what's bad. Yet, yes, all this have I done, that characters might be developed in the formation and organization of bodily frames which would be immune from such poisons. What it seems to be saying is that if the body is so well put together that it's immune to many of these ideas that it knows what ought to be, and it's this is right and this is wrong and this should be, and it gets angry and it gets upset and so forth. It says that if the body's put together well enough, it won't do that, and that life has been working on those kinds of bodies. Bodies that are immune to such things. It's like gradually people get immune to various poisons that are around, because you build up such a well constitution. We're even told by gardeners that if you raise your plants strong enough that the bugs don't eat on them. You ever practiced that anything? Good organic gardening. I don't know of any other kind, but all gardening is organic as far as I'm concerned. But the healthier the plant is, the less it is consumed by bugs and blights and all these things. So the stronger the human body can be, the better well it's constructed and put together, and the least we damage it. It gets so that many of these things which have been easily believed by people and so forth can no longer have any effect on them because it doesn't appeal to them. Through cycles of time has the false knowledge of good and evil. All people know what's good and evil. In fact, we have been taught it, we've legislated it, and everything else thinking we knew. Through cycles of time has the false knowledge of good and evil poisoned the blood of my people, my bodies, says Lot. But unto you who can awake from the dream of evil induced by that poison shall be shown the second mystery. The words of the second mystery are known to many and are used by many to perform wonders. Yet you need not pass lightly by these words. For many have healed divers diseases with these words, and yet have never known their true meaning. On the heart I write these words. This is the second mystery mentioned in this book, and it says, all is good. I would say, without saying that it's good or bad, that it's all right for now. I don't know any better way for it to be. It's okay. So we have a great tendency to feel that everything ought to be straightened up, fixed up, all people ought to be straightened out and everything, but it's all right like it is. Really is doing okay, because all of the resistance that we make every effort to see that there isn't any resistance, that's what's called improving and developing the great society and so forth, is to have one where there's no resistance. And that's what everybody's working at a little bit. Now, resistance we know is absolutely essential for life to evolve, develop well. The body has to have resistance. If you never did anything but laid in the sack and had somebody come turn you over every now and then, so you wouldn't have any effort to move any muscle at all, you'd turn into a blob of jello after a while, and you wouldn't survive. The more you're challenged, maybe you go to a gym and push iron or whatever. It's the way you get strong. You don't get strong from resting. You get strong from challenging and doing things. You see lots of people out, at least where I live, jogging. They're getting stronger, by doing that. And you go over to another place and you see a lot of people moving. I read the other night in a book that we had the only society where anyone who really worked like a dog was doing it for sport. Isn't that funny? Well, we've got to the place where the only way that you can exercise is by having fun or sport. But that seems to be necessary for bodies to get strong. So the second mystery is that all is all right. It's okay just like it is. Now let's respond to it instead of fighting with it and deciding how we're going to improve the situation so there will be no resistance to anybody. Say you that herein is no mystery, yet you shall see me when you see that all is good. You will see life for what it is when you see, and you will recognize you are alive when you really see that all is good. Now, a lot of people say it. Last Saturday, we went to quite a little thing. I won't tell you about it. I wouldn't want you to know I went there. But nevertheless, there was a lady who was propounding a lot of great and wondrous things, and she's saying this world wasn't fit to live in. Now, I haven't been to any one I want to live in other, have you? She was going to leave and go to some higher realm, but she had already said a few minutes ago that she was bringing in some great exalted beings and that this world was going to be one joy pool very shortly. And she'd get crossed up on this every once in a while. She didn't want to be here, but then, well, now they're coming and everything's going to be all right. I think it's all right like it is today. I find it's quite all right to live here, have food, clothing, shelter, transportation, interesting things to do, delightful friends and companions, and everything going on all the time. Now, what do you add to that? Isn't it? Feels good. Lovely people around. Here we sit in a room with a bunch of very delightful people. I've been here before. They were delightful the last time, so it's not put on a show. It's real, it's genuine, because it's always the same. I've been here a lot of times. So what else are you looking for? What are you looking for? Is it all right like it is, or does everything need to be changed? What about it? I am God. I live in all bodies and omnipotent. You cannot find any so-called evil place, but I am there. I and only I am there, developing my body by devious ways. Some of them looks a little rough sometimes. In every impulse I live, conforming to no rule. You know, we're the only ones that make rules. Life doesn't make rules. It says, well, let's adapt to that. If it's real wet one year, the tree adapts to that. And if it's dry the next year, it adapts to that. And so on down the line, and it goes on, age after age, life goes on doing adapting, but we think we ought to change everything so no adaptation be required. Is that right, Brother Mac? And we could just get everything straightened up. We'd never be disturbed at all. We could just sit here and turn into jelly. Most of us are already there. Think you that I conform to any rule, or ideal, or standard, that I must need work my will on the same patterns in another body that I have fixed in you. You know, it don't work the same in all of us. Having one time been involved in the practice of medicine, I know that a drug will have one effect on one person and the next one have an altogether different effect. You know that about food. One of us can eat it and just feel wonderful, and somebody else eats it and they don't feel so hot. And so on down the line. We are all a little bit different, and sometimes a whole lot different. So he says he works on each one different, so don't be fiddling about how the other ones worked on. In you I fix a mental pattern which finds fault with my life in another body. You know, we all see other people doing things they shouldn't be doing, you know. Yes, I call with all voices that each body may differently obey, for all obey my will in the end. When you behold my work putting to blush the mental ideals and sense of fitness, do you say in the heart, such cannot be God's will? I've had people say, well, it couldn't be a God that have wars, but you know, if you want to play a game of war, I guess it's all right. Go play it. Maybe it has an effect. Maybe you get stronger or something, but at least maybe we finally wake up and see that's the senseless way to do things. I don't know, but it seems like it's got some value in it. I just don't want to get involved in one. That's my business. When you behold my work, putting to blush the mental ideals and sense of fitness, do you say in your heart, such cannot be God's will? You know, I saw a big banner across the town about 2 years ago. I was going through over in Arizona, and they had some man was in town putting on a revival campaign, and he had a big sign strung across there. What does God think of Tucson? I don't think he gave it a second thought myself, nor the first one either. In fact, I don't think he even knew the damn place existed. Or do you say, if such is God's will, then he's no God to me? A God that will let little children die, will let pretty ladies have this and that, and so forth, is no God. He's cruel, they can be no God. I've heard these good folks say, you know, if there's any God, he wouldn't let this and that happen. they base their frame of reference on that the only way things can be all right is when we're totally non-disturbed. That is what we call not eyes talking. I wouldn't want to live if there wasn't some challenge. Would you? Or would you like to be pampered away? They have a thing. Do they have them around here anywhere? It's probably in Dallas or Houston, where you have sensory deprivation tanks. They're very big in California. You go down and lay in a pot of salt water in a closed tank, so you have no sensory. The water is so strongly salt you float, so you can't even feel your skin on a bed or anything else. Totally deprived of all senses. That's supposed to really be wonderful. Now, there's a lot of people here used to do it with another method. Is that right, Clyde? You use another method to deprive yourself. Huh? But you get a good bottle, you could get almost the same effect. That's tanked. That's why they call that being tanked, wasn't it? It was ahead of its time. Then it is still well with you, for behold, it is I that live in you, prompting the speech, until you are ready to live consciously as me. That's quite a little statement. Until you're ready to live consciously as me, as living life, not trying to fit somebody's standard, some ideal, be some goody-good two-shoes or anything else, that you're ready consciously to live as life. And life doesn't have any rules by it. It is well that you should conform to the ideals which you have set up for yourself, for the self, until you are moved by inspiration and love. It is well that you should be moved by conscience and desire. Conscience is one of those things that you shouldn't have done that. That's not I. There's one that says you should do it, and then as soon as you get you to do it, it runs, and the other one says, now you've screwed up. Now you'll pay for it forever. If you have a desire in the heart, laying down any rule of action for others, that's easy. We can sure set them up for other people. Wishing them to be what you call good, and to conform to the thought of right or of duty, or of that which they ought to do, then you will say, can such things be God's will? Because I know what ought to be, and if this is going on, it's sure not God's will. When you see all my works, I have no desires but unto you. Until you are ready for my glory, I give all desires which the forms of the mind can accept. Whether you do desire for the self or for others, or for both the self and others, whether you do desire possessions or goodness, or that others shall be good, in all cases these desires are sent unto you by me, in order that the body shall gain strength toward expressing that joy of life which I am, and which is beyond desire. Now, desire does put a terrific strain on the body, as you might know. It's kind of like lifting weights or jogging 5 miles or 10 miles or mountain climbing or something. Having a desire puts a heavy strain on. Now, of course, the only way we get stronger is having strains. Is that right? Could you get stronger, Mac, by sitting thinking positive or by pumping iron? You better believe it. So it's well that the mind is strengthened, or the awareness is strengthened. The inner being is strengthened by having all these desires, which gives us a lot of strain, because that's the way we get strong. I think there's other ways more fun, but that's all right. That's one way it'll do it. I justify all things. Didn't say we justified. Life said, I justify all things. Let all who use the sacred word, all is good, and work many cures thereby, know that these words justify every separate body and act. I am truth. People always want to find truth. Well, what you're trying to find is life, and it's not all that big a deal. It's sitting right here. You ever notice that? Pinch yourself and see. You don't really have to hunt for it. I had a friend one time, he went on to the happy hunting ground. He was always saying he had spent his life searching for truth. He looked under lots of rocks, but all he ever found was worms and bugs and grubs. And you know, he never did catch on that life was sitting right there all the time. He finally departed this world without ever realizing that truth and life and love are synonyms, and that they all exist in us at all times. But we go looking to the ends of the earth for it. I know people who buy tickets and go to India looking for truth. I know some who go to Scotland, look for truth. I know people who go to all sorts of places to look for truth. And truth is another name for life. Is that right, Mac? Where would you look for it? Well, I saw it here this day. I saw it in Houston. I saw it in San Diego this morning. I saw it all the way from San Diego to Houston. I saw it from Houston up here, and I see it here. Now, what have we got to hunt for truth for? It's here. You've been a truth searcher, Marcia? Marcia? Where'd you look?
Every place but right here.
Every place but life. Is that right? Well, if you ever want to see truth, well, you look up to see something alive, okay? And you're watching it at work. That's too damn simple, isn't it? That takes all the fun out of it, doesn't it? Huh? The mystique. Well, naturally. It's out there. I don't know what I was looking for. It was like the guy that went out to look for smoke, but he didn't know what a smoke looked like, so he looked everywhere so he couldn't find smoke. You don't know what truth is. Truth is life. And if you don't know what truth is, you just run around and ask people's opinions. Is that right? We can get lots of those, can't we? Yeah, somebody tell me something any day. I am truth. There is no truth but that which is. All of that which is truth. And all that really is life. Okay? Have you a conscience? That's one of those things that bugs you at night, you know. Have you a conscience which says unto you that you should do this and should not do that? Most of us have one of those cats. Have you had one of those, Mac? I had one when I was 6 years old. I lived back in the hills of Appalachia, and it was a horrible sin to fish or play ball on Sunday. Well, one time a bunch of kids come by, and we went down the creek, and one of them tied a twine string around a bent pin, gave it to me, and I thought I was fishing. And that was just so much fun until I got away from the creek, and then it came up about that, and all that was terrible. And I suffered agonies all week. I was new. I had committed the unpardonable sin, hell-bound for glory, you know. Now, oh man, that hurt. It was terrible. But about 2 weeks later, those same kids come by, and we wound up again down the creek, and again put me in there, and that time it didn't feel quite as bad. And then the third time it did, about another 2 or 3 weeks later, it didn't bother me at all. So I sit down and think about that. That was so terrible. That's such agony. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was terrible. I was sick. And I'd done 3 times, didn't hurt a bit. So I figured anything that conscience started acting up, run to it twice more right quick, and you'll whip it. I told a preacher about that one time, and he said that was called searing the conscience with a hot iron. And I said I thought that was the only thing to do with one. Sear it with a hot iron and get it out of the way quick, because it's nothing but a nuisance. Have you a conscience which says unto you that you should do this and should not do that? I've given it to you. He laid it on you so you get stronger. I have given you a conscience on every point that the form of the mind can receive. You know, we've got different ones according to how much stuff we got. Unto you I reveal its purpose. And in due time you will see my purpose not only in giving you a conscience, but in giving each of my bodies a conscience, each off differing from every other. You know, isn't that nice that you can feel guilty about something and somebody else can do the same thing, they'll feel guilty about it all. And they can do something and suffer with agony, and you say, well, how could that be? No. Used to, several years ago, before things got changed, Catholic folks could not eat meat on Friday without committing a mortal sin, unless you lived in New Mexico. That was always exempt. That's true. I found that out funny. But several years ago they changed the rules. Now then you don't say you can eat meat anytime. Friday, you know, all that's holy, you know. Different day now. So look at all the people who felt so guilty back in those days, and then somebody who wasn't a Catholic, so I don't see how you can feel guilty about not eating meat on Friday, you know. And they just couldn't understand why somebody feels terrible about it. They hadn't been taught it. Now, if you'd been taught that you never allow anybody to see you eat, it was shameful or bad in some way or other, you'd feel very guilty if you went around eating. It'd be rough on the rest of the business, but you could have been made that way, couldn't you? All you had to do is tell you so. Huh? You could have been taught anything was right or wrong when you was a little kid, and then you'd felt guilty about it if you did otherwise. So all it was what we were taught, but it was handed down because that develops the organ of the mind that finally someday you're going to check up and say, that's a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to feel guilty about nothing. Now the organ of the mind, which will afterwards express my freedom, can best be developed by the struggle against bondage. Therefore have I sent unto you all the bondage of conscience which you can accept. Well, that's what it is, and it's a bondage. So you really only get free when you kick all bondage off. Because the organ of the mind, which shall afterwards express the sweet consciousness, not conscience, the consciousness of me, can best be developed to that end by the oppressive self-consciousness that I have sent all, the self-consciousness which you can stand, working in you to prepare the mind to be wholly mine and wholly controlled by the breath of my inspiration. Now, if the mind isn't controlled by conditioning, it's possible for life to use it. But all the things that we have been conditioned, that was bad, was because somebody told us so, wasn't it? Huh? And some of the things that we said was good was because somebody told us, and you shouldn't do this. You know, if you happen to be a Mormon, you shouldn't smoke a cigarette or drink a cup of coffee or have a glass of wine. If you're Episcopalian, you can do anything. And so on. I recommend most people be Episcopalians. It's better. If you got to have one. It's a good place to be buried and get married and have the babies christened and all that. And don't put too much of a load on you. You ever been to Episcopalian church? Did you get much load, or was it all nice and light? You just did your duty by going there on Sunday morning, listen to the Mass, and drop a little in the box and go through the ritual and walk away. Is that right? There's nothing wrong, nothing good, one way or the other. Except don't come to church and don't put money in the box. That's bad. Have I sent thee all the self-conscious which you can stand, working in you to prepare the mind to be wholly mine, says life, and wholly controlled by the breath of my inspiration. So I say unto you that it is well that you are controlled by conscience, that thing it hurts, and desire, which makes you anxious all the time because you haven't got it, until the mind is grown and you can become conscious of me. Thereafter be controlled by inspiration and love. And I do know that it is possible for a human being to get to that point. I didn't say I had, but I do know it is possible. That life can run the whole being by spontaneous response, not by a whole bunch of little rules that somebody laid on you that it's good to do this and it's bad to do this and so forth. So now the second mystery is that all of it is okay. Now, I know that an awful lot of people before morning will know of a lot of things that should be straightened out and a bunch of people that should be straightened out. Is that right? You know a bunch of jerks that ought to be kind of straightened up a little bit. Huh? You know any of them ought to be kind of straightened out a little bit, Bobby? They're all right right now. Incidentally, you know, people call about healings and so forth. And generally about the only thing that you have to do for a healing to take place is to realize clearly and without any qualifications that everything's okay with that person. As long as you know, well, the poor thing sure needs it, Lord, get with it and fix them up. They'll be worse off in the morning, so you better keep your mouth shut. But if you know they're all right, so what? It's okay. Now, you can't do it against their will, but you can do anything that they're willing for it to be. Can't you, Mary? You perfectly willing to feel good, Mary? Sometimes. Oh, you're getting so you don't mind quite so bad. Mary used to have some of the most horrible problems in all the world. Nothing was like it really should be. She was so terrible. All life was picking on her. But only for one purpose, Mary. To put a little pressure on you so you'd have enough strength to enjoy being good, and enjoy feeling wonderful, and enjoy being, okay? Simple. Pretty nice just to enjoy being without trying to become this or straighten everything else, isn't it? So that is through the two mysteries. I think there's something like 12 in this book, so we will go through each of them. As I said when we started, that maybe one of them will appeal to you. I'm quite sure that at least one of them will, and that one is the only one that you ever need. The rest of them are for somebody else. And they will eliminate all your troubles, not all your challenge. Okay, is there any questions anybody wants to ask tonight, or any comments you want to make before we depart for the sleepy time? Clear as mud. Okay, we will not hold any questions. Do you want me to continue on this in the morning, or you want me to take off on my usual joking? I will still stay with last word if you want me to all day tomorrow. Anybody have any objections, or you want it to continue, or what? You want to continue? Okay. All right. The rest of you will tolerate it for those that want it. We will continue with last word tomorrow, attempting to understand what life is saying to us.